In the deep, resonant tones characteristic of the opening of a grand tale, the story begins. Plus Chapter 1, Whispers of Excalibur, plus. In ages past, when the world was still young and the hearts of men were drawn to the mysteries of the earth, there was a land of myth and a time of magic. The destiny of a great kingdom rested on the shoulders of a noble king, his name, Arthur, the King of Camelot. Our tale begins in the twilight of an age where the echoes of honor and chivalry still lingered in the air like the mist that rose across the moors. The land of Britain was divided, torn by petty warlords and the ceaseless ambition of men. It was a time crying out for unity, for a leader to wield the might of justice and bring forth an era of peace. In the hallowed halls of Camelot, where the stone walls had borne witness to the rise and fall of countless lords, the air was thick with anticipation. For it was foretold that a king would come, a king who would draw forth the sword Excalibur from the stone in which it was ensconced, a blade of power so immense that none but the true sovereign of Britain could wield it. The legend of Excalibur had traveled on the lips of bards and through the whispers of the wind, from the highest peaks to the lowest valleys. It was said that the sword was imbued with the light of the Lady of the Lake, its steel as pure as the waters from which it was born. And so, it waited, lodged fast within the stone, for the one whose heart was true. King Arthur, a man of humble beginnings, had risen to the challenge. With a spirit unbroken by doubt and a will fortified by the righteousness of his cause, he approached the stone. The gathered masses held their breath as Arthur's hand closed around the hilt of Excalibur. With a strength that belied his mortal frame, he drew the sword forth, and the sky itself seemed to part in reverence. The coronation of Arthur was a tapestry of splendor, woven with the threads of hope and the colors of prosperity. The people of Britain, from the lowliest serf to the most exalted noble, felt the stirrings of a new age in their hearts. Under Arthur's rule, Camelot flourished, becoming a beacon of light in a darkened world. Yet, even as Camelot grew, the shadows lengthened beyond its borders. Whispers of a brewing storm reached the ears of the wise. Merlin, the enigmatic and powerful wizard who had guided Arthur to his destiny, gazed into the mists of the future with a furrowed brow. For the peace that had been so dearly won was as fragile as a spider's web, and there were those who would see it torn asunder. The story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is one of valor and treachery, of love and loss, of sacrifice and betrayal. It is a tale that wins through the corridors of time, as enduring as the stars that wheel overhead. And at its heart lies Excalibur, the symbol of a king's burden and the testament to his glory. So begins our chronicle, in the days when magic was as real as the steel of a sword and the courage of a lion-hearted king. Let us journey back to those hallowed times, to the court of Camelot and the legend of King Arthur, where the whispers of Excalibur guide our way. Chapter 2, The Siege of Shadows. As the wheel of the seasons turned, bringing the cloak of winter to the lands of Britain, a darkness began to stir in the hearts of men. The fires of Camelot's great hall flickered against the encroaching chill, casting long shadows upon the walls where the tapestries told of Arthur's triumphs. Yet, outside those protective walls, a malice awakened, as if answering the call of some ancient, slumbering hate. The siege of shadows was upon them, though none within Camelot could yet name it. It began with whispers, rumors carried on the tongues of travelers, tales of villages beset by spectral figures and crops withering in fields as though blighted by an unseen curse. The people spoke of a creeping dread, a shadow that passed over the sun, and a cold that seeped into the bones of the earth itself. King Arthur, seated at the round table with his most trusted knights, listened to the reports with a furrowed brow. Sir Launcelot, his countenance as grave as the king's, spoke of a darkness that defied the light of day, and Sir Gawain told of a silence in the forest so profound it seemed as though the very birds had abandoned the realm. Merlin, whose eyes held the weight of many ages, leaned upon his staff and watched the gathering storm with a knowing gaze. "The old magic stirs," he intoned, his voice a deep rumble like distant thunder. An adversary of old has returned to claim what was once theirs. The shadows seek to besiege not just Camelot, but the very spirit of Britain. The knights shifted uneasily, their hands resting upon the pommels of their swords, as if the steel could ward off this intangible foe. But Arthur remained steadfast, his gaze alight with the fire that had claimed Excalibur. "Then we shall meet this threat as we have all others," he declared, "with courage and unity. We shall stand as a beacon against the darkness, and the shadows shall find no purchase in our realm." Plans were laid, and messengers dispatched to the far corners of the kingdom, calling for vigilance and unity. The knights of the Round Table rode out, their armor gleaming like stars against the gathering gloom, to rally the people and fortify the land against the encroaching shadow. Yet, as the days grew shorter and the nights longer, a sense of unease settled over Camelot. The people looked to the skies, where strange portents were seen, and to the forests, where the silence was broken only by the whisper of leaves speaking secrets in a tongue lost to time. In the midst of this growing dread, a figure emerged from the mists, a woman of ethereal beauty and sorrowful eyes. She came to the gates of Camelot, seeking an audience with the king, bearing a warning that would shake the very foundations of the kingdom. "The siege of shadows is but the beginning," she spoke, her voice carrying the lament of the wind. "A greater peril approaches, one that seeks to sever the threads of fate and unravel the tapestry of this world. The sword Excalibur is the key, and the choices you make shall echo through the ages." And so, the stage was set for a battle not just of steel and might, but of heart and soul. For in the siege of shadows, the true enemy was not merely the darkness without, but the fear and doubt that lay within. Thus continues our chronicle, in the days of high adventure and deep sorcery, where the fate of a kingdom hangs by a slender thread, and the legend of King Arthur faces its greatest trial. Let us tread softly, for the path is fraught with peril, and the siege of shadows has only just begun. Plus Chapter 3, The Grail's Redemption. As the pall of the siege of shadows stretched across the land, the very air of Camelot grew heavy with foreboding. The once bright tapestries upon the walls now seemed to absorb the light, their vibrant hues dimmed by the encroaching darkness. The people of Camelot, who had once walked with heads held high under the benevolent reign of King Arthur, now moved with hushed tones and furtive glances, as if the shadow itself had eyes and ears. In the great hall, where the Round Table stood as a symbol of unity and equality, a council was convened. The knights, once resplendent in their shining armor, now bore the marks of their vigilance, their faces etched with the fatigue of ceaseless watch. At the head of the table, King Arthur sat, Excalibur before him, its blade reflecting not the light of the room but the resolve in his eyes. Merlin, ever the enigmatic presence, spoke of an ancient prophecy, one that told of a time when the land would be shrouded in darkness and the heart of Camelot would falter. "In this time of greatest need," he said, his voice resonating with the timbre of the earth, "the Grail shall emerge from the mists of legend to offer redemption. It is the chalice of the divine, a vessel of untold power that can heal the land and banish the shadows." The knights listened, their spirits lifted by the promise of hope. Sir Galahad, the purest of heart among them, rose from his seat. "Let me seek this Grail," he implored, his eyes alight with a fervor that matched the king's own. "I shall embark upon this quest and return with the salvation of our kingdom." King Arthur, moved by Sir Galahad's courage, nodded his assent. "You shall have all you require, brave knight," he declared. "Your quest is the quest of us all, for in the Grail lies the redemption not only of Camelot but of all Britain." And so, Sir Galahad set forth on his sacred quest, journeying beyond the safety of Camelot's walls into a land now fraught with peril. The shadows seemed to watch, to whisper, and reach for him with tendrils of despair, but he rode on, guided by an inner light that the darkness could not dim. The quest led him through desolate villages and past ancient ruins, through trials that tested his body and spirit. He encountered fellow seekers, some driven by noble purpose, others by the lust for power the Grail was rumored to possess. Through it all, Sir Galahad remained steadfast, his purity shielding him from the corruption that sought to claim him. Meanwhile, back in Camelot, the siege of shadows grew ever more dire. The crops failed, and a strange illness took hold of the young and old alike. The people's faith wavered, and whispers of dissent began to spread, like the first chills of winter that presage a long and bitter frost. King Arthur, ever the beacon of strength, refused to let despair take root. He rode out with his knights, offering aid and comfort to his people, his presence a reminder that hope yet remained while the heart of Camelot still beat true. As the wheel of the year turned once more, bringing with it the first blooms of spring, a change came over the land. A warmth returned to the air, and the people of Camelot felt a stirring in their hearts, a sense that the tide was turning. Sir Galahad, after a journey that had taken him to the very edges of the world and the depths of his soul, returned. In his hands he bore the Grail, its surface aglow with an otherworldly light. The shadows recoiled at its presence, and the land itself seemed to sigh in relief. The Grail was brought before King Arthur, and as he took it in his hands, a sense of peace descended upon Camelot. The illness that had plagued his people lifted, and the crops grew once more. The shadows that had besieged the kingdom were banished, and the light of hope shone all the brighter for having endured the darkness. The redemption of Camelot was not just the work of the Grail, but of the unity and courage of its people, of the bond between a king and his knights, and the unwavering quest of a pure-hearted hero. The Grail's redemption was the redemption of all, a testament to the enduring power of faith and the indomitable spirit of those who serve the light. Thus continues our chronicle, in the days when legends walked the earth and the line between myth and history was as fine as a strand of spider's silk. The tale of King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and the quest for the Grail is a tapestry of human endeavor, woven with the golden threads of hope and the silver strands of redemption. Let us remember the Grail's redemption, for in it lies the essence of all our stories, the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is a light that endures, a light that can, and will, overcome the shadows. And so it was, as the first light of dawn crept over the hills and valleys of Britain, that the final chapter of our tale unfolded. The Grail's redemption had cast away the shadows, and the land, once again, knew the gentle touch of the sun. But the heart of the story, the very essence of Camelot, lay in the bond between a king and his people, a bond forged in the crucible of trials and illuminated by the light of hope. King Arthur, with Excalibur in hand, stood upon the battlements of Camelot, his gaze sweeping across the realm he had sworn to protect. The Pendragon, whose lineage was steeped in the magic of the old and the new, had become more than a monarch. He was the embodiment of the land itself, its protector and its guiding star. The Knights of the Round Table, their armor now dappled with the rosy hues of dawn, gathered around their king, their faces alight with the glory of their deeds. They had faced the darkness together, and together they had prevailed, their unity a beacon that would shine through the annals of time. In the courtyard below, the people of Camelot assembled, their voices rising in a chorus of celebration. They sang of the Grail's redemption, of the bravery of Sir Galahad, and of the unwavering spirit of their king. The air was filled with the fragrance of renewal, and the promise of a future bright with possibility. And as King Arthur looked upon his kingdom, a kingdom reborn from the ashes of trial, he knew that the tale of Camelot would be told for generations to come. For in the hearts of those who dream, the legend of the Pendragon would endure, a story of valor and virtue, of magic and might, of a king who united a land and a sword that cleaved the shadows. Thus ends our chronicle, in the golden light of the dawn of the Pendragon, where the echoes of chivalry resound in the hallowed halls of memory, and the tale of King Arthur, the King of Camelot, lives on forevermore.